Hello viewers and learners of the Postgraduate Diploma in Environmental and Occupational Health. The module for discussion is Effects of Toxicity. I introduce myself as Dr. Susmitha Bhaskar from the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University. The learning objectives of this module will be to understand the different types of toxicants and the effects that these toxicants or the toxic substances have on our body. We will explain all this with the help of certain case studies, and we will also see what are the terminologies and definitions of, like for example, the chronic toxicity, acute toxicity and so on. Environmental pollution. There has been serious problems in the developing countries which are affecting the lives of billions. So you will see that either the air is polluted or the soil is polluted, and also the surface as well as the groundwater. These are all being contaminated with from several sources. It could be from the agricultural field where excess of fertilizers or the pesticides are being applied, and then that can actually run into these river and the water systems. So thereby billions of people who are drinking the water, they will get affected with, and then they are affected with lot of health issues. The World Health Organization, they have estimated that 25% of all the deaths, these can be attributed to the environmental factors alone. Now, there are several industrial areas. So, the Central Pollution Control Board in India, they have developed the Comprehensive Environmental Pollution Index in the year 2009. Now, in this, 88 of them were identified as polluted industrial sectors. So that means these industrial sectors are severely polluted from several sources from the industrial sectors. And in 2016, this became up to 100 industrial clusters. Mostly, if we see, these are centered around Gajrauli and the Sanganer, the Hazaribagh districts, Morbi, Tuticorin and also Mandideep districts. So these are all critically polluted. So is there absence of inadequate action to reduce these pollution aspects? And finally, what do we see? We get to see damaged landscapes. Unless these industries around, in and around Delhi, they dump the coal for cleaner fuels, the air quality is not going to improve. In 1990, the Supreme Court gave a directive to switch to the compressed natural gas, that is by April 2001. And then now again we see that coal is still being used and there are a lot of the thermal power plants. So who is to blame? The pollution hotspots. Mostly if you see 7 major industrial districts of the Delhi and the NCR, that is a national capital region. In this we find Ghaziabad, Sonipat, Panipat, Faridabad, Gurugram, Alwar and also Bhiwadi. So here these are all the pollution hotspots, and from there the Delhi NCT, that is a national capital territory, is also getting damaged with the pollution aspects. Now particulate matter. Now if we talk about particulate matter, we have the particulate matter 10 and also the 2.5. That is according to the size of these particulate matter and how it is easily entering the lungs, and you can have a lot of the respiratory ailments. So this particulate 10 emissions, we find 2% in Delhi National Capital Territory region, but 28% in the National Capital region, NCR region. So this is really alarming. Now in this table, which the source is taken from the Center for Science and Environment, the Down to Earth from the year 2021, you can see all the polluting districts, that is the 7 major industrial districts of the Delhi NCR. And you can see the major fuel, are they using coal, are they using wood or any other source. You can see the source also being used and the amount of the emissions that are being let into the environment, whether it is ranging from 30 to 50 or even 60% in certain regions. So are there any solutions for these pollution problems? So subsidies on natural gas, they need to be brought in for the industrial sectors. Industries in the Taj trapezium zone, they are being provided the subsidies on the gas price due to the court's order. So such models, we need such good model for providing the clean air and also bluer skies. Coal. So we had already discussed in the introduction to environmental toxicology that the coal contains mercury, and mercury is highly toxic in nature. So Singrauli is a powerhouse of India, and this has massive coal reserves and many of the thermal power plants. So mercury is one of the natural and the most harmful components that are found in coal, and during combustion, that is at temperatures above 1100 degrees, it vaporizes. So this large quantities of coal, they are burnt in the thermal power plants, and considerable amount of the mercury is released into the atmosphere. So here we find that people are complaining of unexplained ailments. They have the skin, you can see in this figure where the lady has a lot of melanin depigmentation. Then they have chronic kidney failure. They are having certain other skin and other toxic ailments to their organs. So the Center for Science and Environment has reported that mercury, which is a deadly toxin in coal, this is slowly entering the people's homes, their food, water, and even their blood. Even when the blood has been analyzed, by the different agencies, we will see that the amount of the mercury contained was also very high, more than the permissible limit even that is contained in the waters. So therefore mercury is very toxic, and this has severely contaminated the land, water, air and the food chain throughout India. So this is reaching alarming levels due to the discharge of the mercury bearing industrial effluents, and that is ranging from 0.058 to 0.68 milligram per liter. This is several times more than the prescribed Indian and World Health Organization standards of 0.001 mg per liter for drinking water and 0.01 mg per liter for the industrial effluents. So even when the CSE analyzed the blood of the people who are residing there, even that contained mercury, even their hair, their nails, all this contained mercury in alarming concentrations. So therefore mercury is poisonous in all forms, whether it is inorganic, it is organic or elemental. Methyl mercury, this is a neurotoxicant as it can damage the developing brain. It is a teratogen. It can damage the fetal, or it can cross the blood-brain barrier as well as the placental barrier, and it can damage the fetal brain, and entire neurotoxicity can happen. It can also trigger depression and suicidal tendencies, paralysis, kidney failure, Alzheimer's disease, speech and vision impairment, allergies and also hypospermia. Therefore, mercury is carcinogenic, that is, it is cancer causing agent. Even a minuscule increases in the methyl mercury exposures that can adversely affect the cardiovascular system. This is reported by the United Nations Environmental Protection Agency, the Global Mercury Assessment Report, the UNEP program, and it is also a possible carcinogen for the humans according to the International Agency for Research on Cancer. Toxicity, therefore, there are many factors that play a potential role in toxicity and in the effects of the toxic agents. The dosage and exposure is an important factor, and toxicity occurs from adverse cellular, biochemical and also macromolecular changes. So many of the chemicals, they can affect the specific target organs, and the target organs that are affected, this vary on the dosage and also on the route of exposure. Chemicals can cause different types of toxicity. So some can act locally when there is direct exposure, and that can trigger the skin or the eye irritation. And mostly whenever you go to an industry, there could be some kind of chemical agents or some radiations, and this will instantly give you some kind of a skin irritation or even eye irritation, dermatitis and also maybe respiratory symptoms. Whereas other agents can also cause systemic effects in the body in sites remote from where the actual exposure has actually occurred. Now this is a flow chart showing the mode of action of the toxicants. So the mode of action, it can occur at the cellular level, at the molecular level and at the organ level. It depends on the several factors. These factors include the uptake of the toxic substance, distribution of the substance in the human body, metabolism, everybody's metabolism is different, so the metabolic activity is also a factor. The mode of action and excretion, that how mode of action includes whether the toxicant is being stored, whether it is being biotransformed into some other element and then it is detoxified and eliminated from the body through the excretory routes. So here you will see the exposure to the toxicant can be by inhaling the toxic substance. It could be through the skin. When you even apply anything, the skin is also a one of the biggest organs, and that absorption is one of the main sites where the uptake can occur. Ingestion through food or through liquid, when you intake something, that is also a form of uptake of the toxic substance. Then after that, it could be absorbed into the bloodstream and it can be distributed to the various body tissues and also to the various organs. After that, either that substance can be stored and then it could be excreted sometimes, or the stored route can also be metabolized and then it can also cause toxicity and the cycle can go on, or it can also be biotransformed into a non-toxic substance and then be also eliminated from the system. So, the metabolic activity of a person, the immune system of a person, all these are very important factors, because something which is allergic or toxic to one person may not be allergic or toxic to another. So, these are several factors. Now, the chemicals themselves, they may be toxic, they may require metabolism before they cause some kind of toxicity, because in the case of cancer causing substances, we have something called as pro-carcinogens and then the carcinogens. So, some substances require some kind of activation in the body before they can become cancerous or metabolically active to create and to bring about the toxicity or the toxic effects. They can cause damage leading to fibrosis, especially in the lungs, as the body attempts to repair the toxicity. They can damage and disrupt the enzyme system, also disrupt protein synthesis. They can form reactive chemicals in the cells. They can cause changes in hormones. They can produce DNA damage and or epigenetic changes. Some chemicals can perform their function indirectly. How? By modifying the important biochemical functions. They can interfere with nutrition. They can alter physiological mechanisms. Therefore, the chemicals can affect organisms by different mechanisms and basically at the molecular level. So, here you see the chemical can bring about a change in the DNA. It can even alter the bases in the DNA, can code for totally a different protein and bring about and alter the entire biochemical functions. Toxic effects. So, the toxic effects are categorized according to the site of action. Sometimes it can occur at one site, which is termed as a specific target organ, or it can also occur at multiple sites where it is called as systemic toxicity. So, here in this flow chart, you see that for example one chemical, and let us say that that chemical is toxic. It can have its toxic effect on two of the organs, on the excretory system, on the kidneys, on the urinary bladder, the urethra, the entire kidneys, the excretory system, and it can also have the toxicity on the brain, the cerebellum, the cerebrum, the entire nervous system. So, it could be nephrotoxic as well as neurotoxic in nature, for example mercury and lead. Systemic toxicity. So, here the toxic effects are due to absorption and distribution of a toxicant to a site distant from its entry point. Systemic toxicants are examples of potassium cyanide, where it can affect each cell and organ and it can cause entire damage to the body. Classes of systemic toxicity. In this we can have acute, subchronic toxicity, chronic toxicity, carcinogenicity, developmental toxicity and genetic toxicity. One example of the acute toxicity is a Bhopal gas tragedy which occurred in 1984 in Madhya Pradesh in India, and here people were exposed to methyl isocyanate, which was released from the Union Carbide India Limited UCIL pesticide plant in Bhopal. So, here there was a faulty operation and the gas leak actually occurred, and so many people were affected with the gas emissions from here. And 20 years later also the children who were born had the radiation effects, that they had teratogenic abnormalities. The children born were not very normal, they had mental retardation and so on. So, the genetic defects of these radiation and these effects were actually seen in the pesticide effects, and the chemical toxic effects were actually seen in the children who were born. So then later on the government brought about certain compensation and so on, and this is a classic example of acute toxicity due to certain chemical substances and also radiations. Subchronic toxicity. Results are from the repeated exposure for several weeks and months, and this is seen in the humans who are exposed to some pharmaceuticals and related chemicals. For example, ingestion of warfarin tablets, these are actually used as the blood thinners. They are used for several weeks as a treatment for venous thrombosis, which results in internal bleeding. The workplace exposure, that can also to lead for the several weeks, that can also result in the toxicity and subchronic toxicity. Chronic toxicity, these are normally observed in the industrial workers. So it takes months and years to become an identifiable clinical disease. Chronic kidney disease in the workers when they are exposed to lead for several years. So, and also the mining, in the coal mining, they develop the pulmonary fibrosis. This is also referred to as a black lung disease. In this figure, you can see the coal and you can see the lungs which are affected, which is the coal miner's lung, or referred to as the black lung disease. This is often, it looks like the chronic bronchitic patients which is seen in the long term smokers. Their lung also appears in the same fashion. Developmental toxicity, that is toxicity which is occurring to the developing fetus. So these are adverse toxic effects to the developing embryo or the fetus due to toxicant exposure by the pregnant mothers, and it is defined as any structural or functional alteration, reversible or irreversible, which interferes with homeostasis, that is a normal balance and regulation in the body, which interferes with the normal growth, differentiation, development or behavior caused by several toxicants. So here you will see the chemical toxicity caused by lead and the mercury, that can bring about developmental toxicity and its effects on the unborn fetus. Teratogens. So there are several teratogens which are causing developmental toxicity from the embryonic stage to the birth of a child. For example, alcohol, certain therapeutic drugs, drugs of abuse, radiations, and in fact when we talk about radiation, even those radiations that come from the eclipse, from the solar eclipse or the lunar eclipse, and when that can also be harmful to the women who are pregnant. So that is why in olden days and even now, I mean those who believe, when there is an eclipse, the ladies who are pregnant or with a child, they always tell them to remain indoors and not expose themselves to those radiation, because that can have a teratogenic effect and it can cause developmental toxicity. So radiations are really high. In the same way, those who are smoking cigarettes, then those who the hormones which can be given, some of them are given hormones, then the German measles, that is why there is a vaccine which is given for the German measles, so that is a preventive mechanism, so that the fetus is protected from those effects. And again there are also several heavy metals. In the same way, drugs of therapeutic use like the tetracycline, an anti-cancer drug, because when tetracycline is given, you will see that the children born will have yellow teeth. The teeth will be totally yellow in color. The same way, thalidomide, which is actually, it was given for the ladies long back, 10 to 15 years back, where those who had the morning sickness, they had to get over that, and for the severe headache and other kind of the problems, nauseating sicknesses, so they were given these tablets. There again, that also can cause developmental toxicity. Genetic toxicity. This is resulting from DNA damage, and they can alter the genetic expression. It can also be referred to as mutagenesis. The genetic change is known as mutation. The agents which are responsible for causing genetic toxicity is called a mutagen. The toxic effects can be via gene mutation, chromosomal aberrations, aneuploidy or polyploidy, and the mutation can occur in a germ cell and also in a somatic cell. Chromium, cadmium, arsenic and nickel, all are potent genetic toxicity agents. Organ specific toxicity. For example, benzene. This can target the blood cells, blood forming tissues. So the organ toxins can affect specific tissues and organs. Even lead, it can target the central nervous system, kidney and the entire hematopoietic or the blood and the cardiovascular system. Bone toxicity, that is radium. Now there was a classic case study which I would like to give. They are also known as the radium girls. They painted the luminous radium paint on watches, on clocks and aeronautical dials that will glow brightly in the dark. You have seen that even now you get these watches which have those fluorescent or phosphorescent luminous radium paint, and when you are sitting in a theatre or in a dark room, then that will actually glow brightly whenever you want to see the time or anything else on your watch. So radium which is used, that is hazardous. And in 1925, Harrison Martland, she discovered that radium was deposited in these the radium girls in their women's bones, and they had this bone toxicity, and this was a serious issue for these women who are working in such industries. Neurotoxicity. This is those agents which cause damage to the cells of the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Here again, the toxicants can bring about neuroaxonopathies, axonopathies, neuronopathies, the demyelination, interference with the neurotransmission, Parkinson's disease and the mercury, where again the environmental agents, the pesticides, heavy metals can all bring about neurotoxicity and are potent neurotoxins. Domoic acid in the blue mussel. Several people were affected in 1987 by consuming the blue mussels which were contaminated with domoic acid, and this was following an algal bloom which was noted near Prince Edward Island in Canada. So they had dizziness, seizures and also memory loss. So this domoic acid, how is this produced? It was a primary neurotoxin in Mytilus edulis that caused poisoning in the humans, and that causes amnesic shellfish poisoning. Further research showed that the algae, you can see in this figure, the algae, that is a Nitschia pungens, that was the source of this toxin. So that means the toxins can be bioconcentrated in certain fishes, in certain shellfish and the mussels. So we should be very careful in the food choice that we make, because they can be the host, they can be the places where they harbor such kind of neurotoxins. Reproductive toxicity. This involves the damage to either of the male or the female reproductive system. Vinyl chloride, that can cause spontaneous abortion in the fetus whose spouse is exposed to this compound. Cancer drugs can cause the same problem. Ionizing radiations are also spermatotoxic. So therefore, if we can conclude this module, there are a lot of toxic effects of chemicals and also of the radiations and radioactive agents. Systemic and organ toxicity we have discussed, where several agents can bring about both systemic or a specific organ toxicity. Therefore, protection is involving prevention, awareness to the chemical exposures in your workplace, in the industrial sectors, and also on a day-to-day basis on the kind of food that we eat, the food choices that we make. Your workplace can also be a place where you can actually get such kind of occupational hazards, and you could become vulnerable to such kind of toxic effects. Agricultural practices, it is better to go for locally sourced food and those which are organic and free. And sometimes if you have a small garden or if you have pots, you can even grow your own plant sources, for example the greens. In the same way, the best waste management practices are also important for ensuring minimum toxicity to the planet and also to us. Hope you have had a good understanding of this module. Thank you.